It gives me great pleasure to announce our next speaker. Gonna go talk a nice fun about pawning, Bryan Fite. He's happy to be here. Everyone give a nice CornCon welcome for Bryan.
Thank you, Sean. Hopefully, is this good? You can hear me? All right, excellent. Well, welcome. Good morning. Thanks for joining the talk. The title of this session is P0wning the Narrative, or How I Learned How to Alter Reality and Why Compelling Stories Are More Important Than Objective Truth, or facts. Again, my name is Bryan Fite. I'm from Dayton, Ohio. Just a little bit about my journey. I identify as a hacker. I rebranded as a researcher, and I've been in cybers for a long time. And I've gone from being the guy that said no to the person that facilitates yes. As a child of the Cold War, I say sometimes I miss the Cold War, and people are like, what are you talking about? Well, being in cybers, in the Cold War, there was one adversary, and we had unlimited budgets. That is certainly not the case today, as I'm sure most of you are aware. I used to be a trusted advisor. Now I consider myself an AI Sherpa. And what is that? I try to help people wherever they are on their journey to get up to the hill safely and securely. We practice a methodology that we call trustworthy and responsible AI, which is not what this talk is about, but I'd love to talk about that, maybe in the hallway con. I'm the president and founder of a company called Meshco, and we are the creators of the world's first cyber sport called Packet Wars. Has anybody ever played Packet Wars or heard of it? Oh, excellent, excellent. And so, we've been doing this for over 20 years. Now there's games everywhere. There weren't ranges. The only time you could play is if you went out to DEF CON. You could play once a year. So it's awesome to see that this, what I call edutainment, serious fun, P0wning, where it's immersive and teaching people. And it's just, we build games for other people's ranges now, but we also run our own little events still. And then we have a conference called DayCon. We just celebrated our 19th year. It's in Dayton, Ohio. Duh. And we typically have 4 talk tracks: point of origin hacking, radical thinking, beyond embedded, and tools of the trade. And so I will be tagging slides accordingly throughout this presentation. And shameless plug, save the date for next year because it'll be our 20th year, so August 26th and 29th of 2026. I do have to have a disclaimer also, so the insights and opinions shared in this presentation are the product of my own curiosity, research, and insomnia-fueled nights. They do not reflect the views or policies of my employer or associates. My voice is my own, and please remember to spay and neuter your pets. So enjoy the ride. This is the PG-13 version of this story. There is an R-rated version, which again we can talk about later on. But chapter 1, Once Upon a Time. So this is a little bit about my hero's journey, but there's only 7 stories. Has anybody heard this, that there's only 7 stories? I wrongly attributed this to William Shakespeare, and I was spreading misinformation, but in reality, it comes from a book called The 7 Basic Plots by Christopher Booker. It's a rather large volume because, it's got the 7 core basic plots. And I haven't read it yet, but I assure you next year I'm here, I will have read it, and maybe there'll be some more insights that I can share. But I'm especially interested in the hero's journey because I feel like that's kind of what's been going on in my life, where I was very non-empathetic. I was, maybe a reform type A, security, I'm right, so you're going to listen to me, and I wasn't effective. And people would follow me up the hill to frag me, not because they necessarily wanted to, trusted me as an advisor. And so that journey has really led me to be more open-minded, and hopefully I'm a lifelong learner, and we'll talk about that. But I'm still on this journey, but I have passed the Rubicon in some respect as far as loving life and loving diverse opinions and loving this community again, which I, backed away from for a while. Okay, so being a cyber guy and the way I look at the world, and there are RFCs on this, system confidence is a combination of trust and control. High trust environments are more cost effective. People seem to flourish in those environments. And since we're going to talk about stories, in the beginning, there was a very high trust environment with our Adam and Eve living in paradise. Everything that they needed was taken care of. System confidence, life was good. Then we had the original liar. And in fact, it was more of a deceiver because in that story, regardless of which text you look at, he really wasn't lying as much as misrepresenting or creating a narrative around the truth. And eventually got Eve to commit the original sin, got Adam in on that, and then they got booted out of paradise. This, what I would call in the seven plots, obviously a tragedy. But what is the moral of this story? In the immortal words of Neil Peart, Rush fame, conform or be cast out. Okay, so let's take a little bit of a stop here to talk about point of origin hacking. This is kind of a methodology that I use. The CISO panel talked about being forward thinking. So when I look at the world, just as my natural inclination, I look at systems, I try to think about how to break them. I can't help it, it's just the way I'm built, in order to make them better. And so I call this point of origin hacking. The point of origin is when someone somewhere looks at a system and thinks, this is how I would defeat that security. And then maybe they don't do anything about it. And maybe multiple people are having that same experience at the same time. Eventually, somebody produces a private capability. And so we would assume that a motivated and capable adversary will develop these capabilities eventually. And then maybe people don't believe it, it's science fiction, but when a public proof of concept comes out, then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we got to defend against this, generally accepted, and then hopefully the controls to have the system confidence that you need become operationally transparent. So therefore, when we talk about this to other cybers, you should have a threat catalog that is forward thinking, look for novel and theoretical vulnerabilities, because it's not really that difficult before. You can take a infinite number of possibilities, but now that we have tools like MITRE ATT&CK and defend, we can distill that world of possibilities to the TTPs that matter. So I would just ask everybody to consider that. I know this group is probably forward thinking. A lot of the business people that I work with never wanted to talk about theoretical vulnerabilities because it was too far out, but it is really a good way to model and simulate. All right, let's fast forward to 2006. Do we have any GSEC folks in here? So SANS training, GSEC. So when I was going for my certification, there was an opportunity there to write technical papers. And so my first paper that I wrote was on corporate identity fraud. It was in 2006. It was an excellent experience. But at that time, corporate identity fraud or corporate assets were merely, web domain names, maybe some vanity phone numbers, and essentially the business would only manage those assets, the non-digital assets, in trademarks and brands. And those were very mature practices. But the litmus test was, is it actionable? And I won't go into too much detail, but these are all lawyers' actions. They would take screenshots of the assets that were being abused or the fake websites, print them out and FedEx them for chain of custody. Not a very efficient, even in 2006 timeframe. Then I had a series of very impactful experiences. The first being 15 years later, I wrote a follow-up to the corporate identity fraud called The Future of Fraud Today, and the links are you can read these documents if you want. But at that point, I said, hey, let's go find out what the state of the art is 15 years later with corporate identity fraud. And spoiler alert, it hadn't gotten any better, it had only gotten worse because there are more and more identity assets out there. Can anybody think of some identity assets that are non-traditional, but everybody has them? your social media, your Slack channels, your CIDR blocks. There's all sorts of them, and they're not managed as assets, right? And nobody even really knows what it's worth until something goes pear-shaped. So just let's keep that in mind. So I'm saying, okay, the attack surface is getting bigger. We're still playing catch up, and it's kind of like the Red Queen problem. You got to keep running faster, but you're not moving forward. At that time, I was with British Telecom, and they were investing a lot in what they call challenger sales technology or techniques. So there's a company called Corporate Visions. I don't know if you've ever heard about them, but that's when I first started getting into some of the concepts, what I'll call lizard brain stuff, cognitive dissonance, confirmation bias, loss aversion. And I was like, wow, okay, we are biological machines, so this makes sense. And those techniques made me a more effective communicator. It allowed me to listen. And essentially, when you're selling commodities to people, how do you, sell me this pencil? I don't know if you've ever seen that in the movie. And these were techniques to actually get people to even answer the call and have a conversation to try to get to yes. Has anybody seen The Social Dilemma? What I call anti-social media documentary. This was another pivotal experience because I'm like, wow, I should have known it, but the algorithms really feed off of division. Now, our internet was really about cat videos and cat pictures, right? The new internet is about monetizing everything and monetizing hate and putting us against each other. At least that is my perspective on what's going on. And it's, maybe some confirmation bias, maybe that's why I liked it so much, but they were actually showing that these were systematic forces at work. Maybe nothing planned, it's just the way it was going, and the algorithms were being efficient in doing their job, but maybe not so good for humanity. Last year, I introduced, as part of our Packet Wars campaign, something called the Deepfake Justice League. And the premise is that we're trying to find ways to help humans survive in a world where you can't trust your senses. And so I went out to summer camp and hit up all the sessions on deep fakes. And I had the fortunate opportunity to hear Dr. Matthew Canham from the Cognitive Security Institute present at B-Sides, Vegas, cognitive attack taxonomy. And again, the way my mind works, like, wow, this is a framework very similar to MITRE that talks about the TTPs and the defenses that you can use against these tactics. And I'm like, okay, we could start building simulations. So, Matt's my new bestie, and we start collaborating on some things. I was very fortunate, takes a village, fortunate to make it out to George Mason University for a workshop called ConnectCon. It was fabulous. There were so many people that were talking about this subject. Probably, very similar to CornCon, yesterday's CISO session, small, intimate gathering, big thinkers, little room, trying to solve wicked problems. And that's where I met Win, who's over there at the Cognitive Security Village. He did not know I was taking this, but it's always fun when somebody's in VR to take a picture of them. But these are very immersive experiences to try to show you how some of these cognitive illusions, or we think we know what we're doing, to really show you that you don't, and that talks to System 1 and System 2. And so we have started to collaborate with the Cognitive Security Village and Win and his team to build out challenges that are human-friendly, that get people engaged, and they're right over there, so I would suggest that everybody, if they get an opportunity, to go over there. It was during that particular workshop that they were talking about some things. I said, this is my time. I'm gonna drop some knowledge on these guys. And I said, hey, I think the future, the currency of confidence, is going to be transparency and objective truth, aka facts and maths. And I was ready to start fielding questions because I was sure that I would have touched a nerve there, and I did, but not exactly how I thought. I actually heard simultaneously a chorus of cognitive pundits declaring, "Oh, grasshopper, you have much to learn. The truth doesn't matter. It's all about the narrative." Radical thinking, head mind blown, but I got it. It really did. It was like a switch, and I go, you absolutely right. And that explains a lot of my cognitive dissonance and what I'm seeing and feeling. But now I have, a group that I can talk about. I've got some tools which I did not have before. So chapter 2, the awakening. Yes, I am a fanboy, and I brought my book to get it signed, and he's got books over there. But what Win has done is all the heavy lifting. He's done the research. There's so many references in here. There's something called TMI, and it's too much information, but we'll talk about it in a minute. This thing has way too much information for a single read. So it's all got my notes in here, and I will probably be rereading it again, and I have the Kindle version also. But it's giving me a language to understand this, more threads to pull on, to get smarter about it, and thanks, Win. I also read a book, a rather lengthy document put out by the Air Force on human-machine interfaces. And since now we're talking about the future of war instead of the future of fraud, it's very germane. And we know that this is happening, and it will happen, and there will be people that will actually plug in, and there will be AIs involved, so all sorts of fun things. But this is the beyond embedded bit. We will be living with this technology that we're creating, and we're going to be connecting it to, ourselves, our kids. So it's probably pretty smart that we get it right. So that also suggests that the human brain, probably always has been, but certainly now should be considered critical infrastructure. So yet another domain that we have to protect. I don't know if we have any Seinfeld fans out here, but worlds are colliding. And I'm not going to look at all of the different domains, just the cyber, physical, and cognitive domains. And one of the ways that we try to understand attack paths and building these models is to use the extended OSI model that includes certain social constructs, governments, individual motivations, and then, of course, the traditional network compute stack. And we've started doing a lot of graph databases. So anybody, Maltego fans, anybody use Palantir? Basically, it's connecting the dots, and these are all pivot points. The problem with the maths on this is these databases get very big very quickly. And if you're trying to do multi-attack path modeling or visualization, especially if you're wanting to talk to somebody and show them, you are here, here's how the proverbial butterfly flapping its wings in China can turn a pumping station off in, pick a spot. You can engineer cascading failures. And that was really what we were trying to do. We had some work with DHS and some other large entities to get access to that data. And right now, if there's anybody who's really good at visualization, we're working on a next version to try to build this tool. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is play three-dimensional Star Trek chess across domains. And that's probably going to be these cascading failures, the one that gets us. And you never see the one that gets you, right? Or it wouldn't get you. So this Schrodinger's paradox in the really real world. This is something it's kind of like a bar conversation, but if we agree that everything you perceive, sense, feel, think is your reality, and that everyone perceives reality differently, then wouldn't that suggest that alternate realities coexist at the same time? And of course, the cat's very bored with all this. But this suggests we might want to understand how to navigate alternate realities in the really real world. Certainly, my reality, I crave that capability to make sense out of some of the things that we're seeing, hearing, thinking. So if cognitive infrastructure is critical infrastructure, I would suggest to you that it is under attack. And how is it attacked? There's lots of other ways, but just these are the basics to understand. Misinformation, that's false or misleading information that's spread unintentionally. Like myself, when I was attributing the 7 stories bit to Shakespeare. So I'm sorry about that if we had that conversation, my bad. Disinformation, which is the false information that's spread deliberately to deceive, okay, that's bad. Alternate facts, what I call bovine excrement. This is the PG-13 version, so BS. These are misleading or false statements presented as truth with intent. And the intent piece here, I think, is the key word. And then TMI, not too much personal information as we normally use that term, but the term that Wynn has come up with, which is the volume of information and the velocity. This is exceeding human processing capacity, and it's essentially causing cognitive overload and societal disruption, and I call it DOSing your noggin. And again, all the references are in here. I won't go into all the science about it, but he's done a really good job of showing you our theoretical bandwidth across our senses, and it's very telling. And these are systems of systems. So our human attack surface are our senses, right? I mean, that's if we're going after modifying somebody's reality, we're going to hit them up on all these senses. So you know, what you hear, you know, what you see, what you think, how you think, your physical, tactile, smell would also be in that. And so the Deepfake Justice League is all about trying to create scenarios and trainings and immersive environments so that we can find out, you know, are we susceptible to those attacks that would hit this surface? So these sensory signals and the cognitive systems interact in very complex ways, but they act in very predictable ways. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. Let's focus just on the cognitive piece for a moment, which the talk is about. System one, what I used to call lizard brain. Those are things, that's the part of your system, your brain, that is fast. It's subconscious, it's automatic, you use it all the time. It's how we just don't, nobody thinks about breathing, you just breathe. However, it's error prone. And there are, you know, 4 states of trauma response. We've heard the fight or flight, but there's also freeze and fawn. And so if we feel like we're being attacked across system one, we're going to respond in one of these 4 ways. And it's just the way we're wired. It's what allowed us, you know, we're really good at surviving, you know, running away from something, fighting something. But we don't have to flex those skills, but our brain hasn't evolved past that yet. So these are there. And then you have system 2, which we would say is slow. It's conscious, it's effortful, but I would just say expensive, right? It's expensive because it requires you to actually think, make complex decisions, but it can be reliable. So figuring out a way to leverage system 2 might be a good thing. And when we look at what we're facing right now. And so I call this slide is really how to create a reality distortion machine without even trying. So there's perverse forces that are aligned against humanity, fueled by greed, powered by bullshit. These reality distortion machines use cognitive dissonance, echo chamber, confirmation bias, and all these other cognitive weapons of mass distraction, addiction, and division to pwn the narrative. And when we look at some of these, and again, are they collaborating? I don't know, it's just the way it is. But marketing is sales, that's how I learned about lizard brain tricks. You might call them Jedi mind tricks. Big tech, tech bros, maybe the modern robber barons, who knows? Politicians, organized crime, nation states, rogue algorithms, lone wolves and mercs. So those are the actors out there. And it's, you know, they're pretty effective at doing what they're doing. Can you imagine if somebody consciously designed a system like this to operate at scale and pace? Well, I can assure you nation-state adversaries are doing that right now. A moment on what I call the illusion of choice, and you can look at any sector. When we see wealth and power consolidating, these are the 7 media organizations that own everything as far as the media concerns. So you probably have a streaming service or 2 from one of these. You probably get your daily news from one of these, especially if you're somebody from my generation. I know that most people don't consume television and probably will become less and less you know, important to the next generation. But it's, you know, the narratives that are created here, you could imagine there might be some consistent views through their media outlets. And maybe that's why they've actually come together. Who knows? So let's talk about alternative realities coexisting at the same time. So we have our statement that we're going to execute narco-terrorists on sight. Due process does not extend to combatants of war. That's convenient, right? Or those people. But at the same time, we're pardoning the persecuted. So anybody familiar with Silk Road? One of the original Darknet. This gentleman was pardoned, Dread Pirate, and the story of the narrative or the moral to this story is Darknet marketplaces are beyond the law. So we don't want government to overreach, and we're going to rectify something bad that was done to somebody who didn't deserve it. That's where I start to feel cognitive dissonance. I just don't understand. I cannot reconcile both of those things being true at the same time. So to me, that's a critical thinking cue, and we'll talk about critical thinking as a response. Another story, this is like, somebody who was eating breakfast, took a picture of the White House and was showing people throwing trash out of a window. What's going on there? The president was asked immediately in real time on TV, hey, what is this? And without missing a beat, oh, that's obviously a deep fake, it's a hoax. I can prove it with my elaborate rambling backstory. And I'm like, well, why would you lie? What's the motivation there? Do you just feel like you have to have an answer for everything? Isn't it okay just to say, I don't know, let me get back to you on that? But it's this, and then Get Real actually confirmed that this was real, it wasn't a deep fake. And I think the final moral of this story is maybe untrained contractors chucking trash out or a security incident, I don't know. This did not make the news cycle, so if anybody has a follow-up to this, please let me know. But for me, this is the think before you click, that temporal patience versus the need for speed. We always want an answer immediately. Maybe we can slow down a bit. Maybe we can, squeeze our corn, serenity now, serenity now. Chapter 3, the journey home. So my North Stars, and I told you about my journey where, used to be just type A, no empathy, very ineffective to where I got. And I took another, what I call my bliss index. So if you talked about this, I only work on projects that give me joy with people I like that make the world a better place. Got to put a caveat on the better place bit. One size does not fit all. Remember, I am inherently biased for what is good for me, might not be good for you. And so we have to be aware of that. And then that could be the basis for actually starting to have civil discourse again and be able to talk and debate things, because I miss that. I miss that. Also, as a ordained minister of the Church of the Subgenius, I'm all about slack and flow, and it's a continuum. Here is the deepest pits where there's no slack to the objective of total slack. I just remind you, to get slack, you have to give slack. So please go with the flow. So what are the TTPs of a bullshit artist? I am looking for, and this is tools of the trade part, indicators of BS, I call IOBs. Cognitive cues and prompts of significant that might help us detect if we're dealing with a bullshit artist. I don't know if anybody saw The Greasy Strangler. It's a great movie. It's an indelible marker for your brain. And the doctrine of Ds. So when I see people that will deny, delay, distract, deflect, divide, destroy, and there's nothing else there, that to me, I might be dealing with a bullshit artist. Cambridge has done a lot of research on this. Again, thank you, Wynn, for getting the book. But there's the depict framework. And these are cues to find out if maybe you're being BS'd. Discrediting, another D up there, is one technique. Emotional fear-mongering, okay? Polarization, impersonating experts, conspiracy theories, and trolling. So those are all ways when you're interacting with somebody, whether it's via email or in a media, or when you're having a discussion with somebody, be looking for those telltale cues that maybe you're not having a fair conversation. And there is an actual test that they put together, and the link will be in the slides, to find out if you're susceptible to misinformation, and in fact, which of these techniques are more effective against you. And that way you can start to develop, understand where your blind spots are. Cognitive warfare countermeasures. We are working on this, but we still don't have it. So a BS detector or some glasses that you could put on that would cut through and see it. We don't have that yet. If somebody does, please see us over at the Village. But WIN has two techniques that seem to me, they'd be very effective. Critical thinking, right? We just use some logic, and maybe we need to invest more in critical thinking. But critical ignoring is the easier one, and I had already been doing that and didn't even realize it. I got off of a lot of the social media platforms. LinkedIn is the only one. I try not to doom scroll. I don't feed the trolls. We used to run sock puppet campaigns on IRC channels. Those techniques, it's the same thing. So just don't feed the trolls. And then maybe if we could start to achieve System 1, System 2 optimization by acting with purpose or temporal patience, count to 10, squeeze your CornCon. Pre-bunking, anybody heard of this technique? Pre-bunking is where you essentially can start to inoculate yourself against BS. And it's done by it's an exercise. It could be a tabletop. It's fairly straightforward. There's lots of resources out there. But the idea is that I'm going to give you a bullshit story, and then we're going to talk about why it's BS, which part of it's BS, and how by having those techniques, it allows people to be a little bit more critical when they're looking at something, and then to figure out maybe I'm going to go do my own research on it instead of just going along with the crowd or the lemmings. There is deception, and honestly, you should learn how to lie to robots, learn how to lie to liars. If you can, and again, this is where it gets morally and ethically a little sketchy, because if we're going to try to Jedi mind trick other people to our way of thinking, are we any better than the folks that we're trying to defend against? I don't know, but it's got to be in our at least considerations in our toolkit. So with all these awesome CornCon talks, we want to have a call to action, and how can we apply this? First thing is join the conversation. Cognitive Security Institute, they're a nonprofit. We'll have links there. You can see the type of things they're doing over the Village. Come see us at DayCon. We publish all our stuff afterwards, so if you can't come to be it in person, please go pull down the content that we have. Right now, this is a working theme called Resistance is Fruitful, and I don't know if it's going to stick. Maybe you guys can give me some feedback on that. And the Deepfake Justice League, get involved. We are actually playing we're recruiting for the Deepfake Justice League, and we have a game that we're playing over here, so QR code it, be part of the invitation to join, and you can win fabulous prizes. So get involved there. By mastering your, what I'll call mind foo, or your cognitive self-defense, trying to find that serenity now to achieve System 1, System 2, optimization, harmonization. Get involved with Packet Wars games. We do red team, blue teams, and purple teams too. And it is all about trying to train, assess, and recruit cyber operations personnel, but also the tools are there just for regular humans that are trying to get through the day. So the invitation I mentioned, you can scan this if you can see it. Please sign up if you know somebody who likes to play these types of games. Like I said, there's prizes, and we are recruiting. And whoever wins these games will get invited to the next games. I'm actually really excited about this is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So the Phishing Golf Tournament that Cognitive Security Institute's put out, there's something called NIST Fish Scaler, which is really cool. I played an early version of this at DEF CON, this year. But essentially, you get to fish in AI, and it will tell you how successful you are. It will tell you why you weren't successful, and it will give you that feedback loop. And I can tell you, after 3 cycles of handcrafting a phishing email, that feedback loop, it was on the 3rd try that I scored the highest number, and I fished the target, which was a digital twin of Ken Lay of Enron, because they had, I think, 20,000 corporate email addresses that they trained a model on. Very cool stuff, and it really, there's science to this, and there's maths, and I encourage you to play. And we bought the middle square. In the middle square, the challenge is to get somebody fired via email. And so maybe this would be a possible target. It can be anything, but I encourage you to play that game. And then I'm going to leave you, we might have time for a couple questions, but I'll leave you with this. Protect your noggin, save the world, long-term human survival. We're going to have to coexist with these weird machines that we've created. And the real question is, do you want to live in Star Wars or do you want to live in Star Trek, which is the reality? And maybe there's a different one, but for me, that's kind of the binary question. So don't panic. The final chapter hasn't been written yet. With that, thank you for your time and attention.